G'day everyone, this is Rangadad, not financial advice, just the way I'm looking at the market. Yeah, last night was a bit of a wild one, but I'll just start out with this because I think this is pretty critical. It's not as strong on Bitcoin itself, so I think it's important to look at this one on total crypto market cap versus the main stable coins. We've got a pretty decent sort of horizontal line here. Hasn't, I mean, it's got a lot of trading through there previously, but just of late, like obviously it's bounced off it twice there. Rejected from it here, rejected from it there, rejected again last night, my time, today US time. And it's starting to form a wedge as well. So we've wicked through this a couple of times. It's not the best bottom side on this wedge, but it's a series of higher lows. Typically, these do break to the upside, but they can also break to the downside. So this is a key one for me. If this breaks down, you can actually do a measured move on this. I don't like measured moves on these as much. Most people would take it sort of from the first, the start of the wedge. So that's going to be an interesting level for us, right around that resistance level. The other one is if we broke, let's say we broke down today, that's making new lows again, which there is still quite a bit of liquidity there that we didn't sweep. Mentioned that before. It's a tricky one because if we're going that low, then look, that could be a local bottom, and it kind of wouldn't surprise me in a way that if we had a more extended sort of move around the bottom here, like just a accumulation, a bit more accumulation before we actually go up. Like Bitcoin's been absolutely beaten down. Like this is a lot of selling to get Bitcoin down this far this quickly. And the same on the stock market. Like typically you're going to need to have some accumulation before you go back up. And just when you think it's at its worst and it's going to keep going down, that's when it'll probably reverse. So the video yesterday, the question was, are people too bullish? I guess probably. The question today is basically, where's this going to break? I still kind of like the upside for a break here. Bitcoin does like breaking wedges to the upside, but at the moment, this is pretty well a bear pennant. And you've got to be mindful. Like it's still 1 foot out the door. If we break above this and confirm. So what you'd actually be looking for here, because this green one is the bull market support line, you actually be looking for something that comes up, probably rejects from that the first try, but you want to find support off this, the horizontal line, top of that wedge. Even like a trickle into this wedge and to hit the bottom of that again is fine. That's completely okay. But kind of want to be breaking through on the next one. And even a breakthrough and a sort of a retest of this area here would be a good thing as well. So it's not just going to go straight through and go straight up to this level. Not necessarily. Bitcoin can do that. But yeah, that's kind of the scenario that you're looking for there for the bulls. For the bears, if this does break down, this could actually go quite quickly. I think it's going to take the stairs up. It could take, well, could take a base jump down, really. But that's an interesting level for me too, just to take the lows of this wick here. Looking at it on Bitcoin itself, this level, it's got a few more touches on it back here, but it's sort of hasn't had as much action. It's not as clean a level as what it is in the near term on total versus stables. So we have sort of confirmed above the mid band of this channel though, which is a good sign. So potentially a retest back down into this area. There is a little bit of liquidity there for it. But at the moment, it's actually bouncing off the 13 EMA on the 1 hour, which is also the 1 hour Bollinger Band 25 period, 1 standard deviation. That's actually of interest to me. This indicator here is suggesting it will continue to the downside. So I think the candle closes here are going to be critical. I think I'd like to see sort of 2 candles closing above the 13 EMA on the 15-minute. But that's a strong sign there. Yeah, typically you want 2 candle closes at least, because 13 EMA, it can sort of just fake out below or above, like here, for instance. But 2 counter closes normally leads to decent movement in that direction. So we've got this is overextended to the upside, but it could turn around, especially with sort of the volatility we've been seeing lately. This was nuts in here. Like, it was super quiet, and then all of a sudden, 11 o'clock my time last night, it just went crazy. Up, down, all around, generally down. But, you know, some of these moves, like that, wicked up in less than 5 seconds and it was back down. Not the best level that it hit here either. I think it should have more in it to the upside. Typically, all the moving averages are starting to point to the upside. We are above the 4 hour 50 or 1 hour 200 as well. So I guess it's not confirmed yet, but this is actually a decent upside signal. The only thing is these are still pointing down. This one here, the reverse EMA, has started to tick up. That is a good sign. And the slower moving average here is actually just ticking up as well. So again, generally, I'm still biased towards this breaking to the upside of that wedge that I just mentioned. Just that general grind up seems likely. Now, there was a massive short apparently on Hyperliquid. Liquidation level at about 86k. Short was taken at about 83. Apparently, there's some whales trying to attack it and liquidate it. That could lead to a big move, but ideally, I think the move was happening anyway. It's just that's a news story that could be used to argue for it. There is some decent levels at 85, 500 as well. At least there were. I'll get to that in a second. But generally, Ethereum's looking strong. That's actually looking stronger than Bitcoin at the moment. A little bit of a wick here is not great. Coming up to the 800 EMA as well, so could be an interesting time for Ethereum. But generally, that might mean that Ethereum versus BTC is actually going up. Wow. Those guys are going to be happy. Sol's generally making its way up and to the right as well. It's got a little bit more to move to get through the EMAs, but if Bitcoin does it, Sol will follow. XRP is looking strong as well. Generally, all these, the trend is returning to the upside on the shorter time frame. So Sui's looking good. That was a strong bounce off the Bollinger Band. They are sort of in the upper end of the linear regression channel as well. So I've got to be a little bit careful, especially when there's wicks up here at the highs here. But in general, again, this isn't a bad basing sort of pattern. All right, jump back in here. So yeah, reasonably strong candle. 3 minutes left on this one. Good bounce off the 13 EM, sorry, the 9 EMA and the 13 really. I want to see it breaking this level and confirming. And that should lead us up to here, which is 88,643. And to be honest with you, I would kind of expect it to eventually break that because there is a lot of liquidity trapped up in here as well, up into the 90K region. 89 to 90 anyway. All right. Have a quick look at the Qs. Let's go to the daily. Why didn't that work? Ah, here we go. So yeah, grinding up, looking okay. Bravos Research did an interesting video on the Fed's credit, like bond indicator, that typically if it gets over 20, and recession is imminent. But it's actually dropped back out of 20 without a recession being called. And that can typically lead to another year or so of upside movement. In 99 it happened, it went up another 20%. When was the other one? 1967 from memory was another one. It kept going up a bit. And there was another one, which I can't remember. But that's an interesting stat and kind of aligns with what I saw when looking at the dot-com bust in terms of like dot-com boom versus liquidity levels and the initial drop that happened in sort of 99 and then led to about 6 months of sort of chop sideways and up a little bit before the final drop. And it kind of aligns with the fact that we haven't really seen any economic data or any major crash or breakage of anything in particular that typically would lead to a continuation of the downside of this move. So I'm still leaning towards generally choppy market, but not really expecting anything major to the downside yet. That could change in an instant on some sort of news thing or, you know, a Silicon Valley Bank kind of event. So still 1 foot out the door this year, but generally I'm expecting a little bit of upside, and this could be choppy through here. This is sort of why I'm a bit cautious on Bitcoin as well, because we are below the 200 EMA on the NASDAQ and basically all of regular stocks in the US. Typically that will provide some resistance. So we could come back down in here, particularly this little trend line here might find a bit of support. So again, choppy. FOMC meeting this week, interest rate decision. They're talking about keeping interest rates high still. They're worried about the tariffs as well. So, you know, there's a lot of ingredients that are going into this particular soup at the moment. And yeah, the market's going to move on a whim. So NASDAQ, yeah, so interesting gap up there. that just opened the after hours. There we go. Then, yeah, interesting gap up. Something like that. That one's still closed. That concerns me a little bit. Got to be careful too if the after hours trade sort of grinds to the upside and we start to hit key resistance on the daily when the main market opens. That's when you got to be really careful because they can just rip that to the downside. Quite often the after hours will sort of fake out. I wouldn't necessarily expect us to drop below this level again, but we could have a decent drop. Equal weight, still looking strong. Getting back through some of the moving averages, getting close to that 200 EMA as well, with some decent sort of resistance levels above. Just the resistance now. And this probably is going to be a support. It was a previous vector, but it's more of just a general support now. SPY. Yeah, so SPY has kind of rejected off its 200 EMA already. So just careful of that. And it is rejected from a reasonable sort of horizontal level as well. Equal weight, S&P 500. It's moving up pretty strong. That actually closed above its 200 EMA. So that's interesting. Plenty of support below now. Like we are above some pretty decent trend lines. Yeah, I'm not too concerned. If we do come back down, it looks like it should find some support at this stage. Like that's the way I'm looking at it. Back in this channel, sort of challenging the top of this channel again on XLI. A break above that would be of interest for markets. XLY, XLP has come back down a little bit. That's interesting. Yeah, that could throw a spanner in the works. Typically, you don't want to see that coming down when the markets are going up. Especially, you don't want to see this going up either. It's an inside candle, so there's no real confirmation of direction on either of these, but that's a little bit of a caution, 1 foot out the door kind of scenario. Kind of a nothing move on the equal weight though. So not as concerning on the equal weight as it is on the regular. We did break back below this trend line here too, and a second candle closed below that on the equal weight XLP versus SPY. Again, I think this should generally trend down to this support level, potentially into here. Yeah, both equal weight, consumer discretionary and consumer staples are moving up. Going to be choppy through these levels. Whoa, close right on the 50 EMA for financials. Regional banks still got a little bit to go. See how we go there. ITB is moving up, but man, this has got some work to do. It's just got a downward trend line here. It's got a longer term trend line through the bottoms here. There's going to be a lot of resistance here. And if we break back down to the downside there, that's got to be a negative sign for markets. The housing sector is a big one. If you have issues in the housing sector, typically the recession that comes is one of the bigger ones. Semis just closing back inside this channel. Looking reasonably strong, but a bit of a rejection wick there. It's not great. Momentum's to the upside, so hold on to your nuts for a bit there. DJI Gold, it's still getting slammed a bit. Kind of looks like it's trying to recover a bit though, so yeah, same with DJT Gold. I'd like to see these above this trend line if we're going to go on a decent upside move. Like there's a lot of indicators that are still out that are suggesting we might struggle more than what some people think here. Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. That's an interesting level to be rejecting from. 200 EMA and this major support line, or previous support, it's now resistance. That there, a move back down away from that, particularly a break below this, that's markets are going to drop more. I would expect it to come back down to this measured move. Like that's concerning for me. Retail sales, not great. Better than previous, but not great. Especially compared to forecasts. I think that's what moved the market last night, actually. I think that's what the chop was about. VIX is almost coming down and resetting too, so we'll see what happens. Next couple of days, we could still see some upside. But when the VIX gets back down into here, there could be some fireworks. So that'll be an interesting one. Skew is ticking to the upside. We've seen that a couple of times here, and it got smashed back down. So I still like that level though for the skew. I still think that should be a decent base, and the skew should make its way up into these trend lines. Wait and see what happens, but that's still a positive sign for me. And the VIX one day is getting slammed to the downside, so it's probably coming down into some key areas. I don't know that this is much of a trend line, really. I'd like to see it back in around there. But it's getting there pretty quickly too, so got to be a little bit careful here that if this does get down into this level, that we might be done for the upside move. Yeah, one to watch. Doesn't look done at the moment though. It's coming down pretty hard. So DAX moving to the upside. Chinese market, it's looking okay. This is an interesting one. Getting these big green candles that are just getting slammed back down. It is starting to form a bit of an upside trend though, with momentum and BBWP. Looks like it should come up into that level there. It's the China 50. UK 100 confirming above that trend line. That's a good sign. So probably more upside to come on this, just for vector candle recovery at least. Japanese markets recovering a lot of these vector wicks in here. That's a positive sign. TLT, still chopping around this area. I think it'll probably stay around here for a bit too, until the market drops next. Then we'll, I mean, if the Fed comes out and drops rates, then this should go pretty well. But high yield jump, good bounce off that level. Recovered this trend line. That looks like it wants to keep going as well. Still got some resistance, but this will be an interesting trend line through here as well. Some vector candles and some gaps above, so we'll see how we go. Generally positive on that. Generally positive on LQDIF. Yield curve looks like it's going to try and uninvert again. Sorry, try and invert again. 3 month versus 10 years still trending down. That's not a bad thing. 2-year yields coming up a little bit. So Trump will probably try and say something that tries to get them down again. 10-year. These are coiling in a pretty interesting area too, going into an FOMC week. interest rate decision. Below the 200 EMA here and the 50, well below the 50 and the 200 on the 2-year yield. Could get a bit of a spike into here still. When is the FOMC meeting? Oh, I'll look at that later. I think it's not tonight my time. I think it's tomorrow night my time. Chinese yields are going up still, just grinding up. No one wants the bonds. It's going to be potentially a global credit thing that is the catalyst for whatever happens, I think. Copper, good breakout on copper actually, but again, the measured move actually comes in pretty close to the $5 mark. So $5.10 mark, which is the peak here. It'd be interesting to see what happens around then. Momentum's getting pretty overextended with high BBWP, so still think it's got a little bit to go to recover a bit more of this vector, but rejection off that. Gold, yeah, it's chopping around a little bit. We saw this before, like a bit of rejection, recovery, just chop around. I think it's probably done somewhere around here. Like, I don't think it's actually hit the. I did. It took the 3K mark on the spot market. So yeah, again, I'm not super interested in that at the moment. On the Aussie market, it came down a bit yesterday. That's interesting. Silver versus gold, it's still trying to break that range. Silver itself has, retested that trend line. So silver's not a bad one. Might dabble in silver a little bit here. I don't know if it's risk worthy versus some other players, but oil chopping around a bit. Dixie. Interesting level for Dixie here. This looks like accumulation to me. I think Dixie's going to make its way back up, recover these vectors at least. Yeah. I mean, Japanese yen's due for a move down, euro's due for a move down just to recover these vectors as well. It did recover this vector here, so could be wrong, but that looks like a bit of distribution there. What's the Aussie dollar doing? It's probably going to get hit again. Probably going to come down here, to be honest. Building permit, housing starts. That's going to be a key one for tomorrow for the home builders. It's like that, yeah. So 20th of March my time, Thursday morning my time, Wednesday US time. That's a key day. We could pretty well just chop sideways until then as well on markets. Global liquidity is still not doing much. Now, this global liquidity indicator, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's a little bit more reliable than there's another indicator that's called like global liquidity. Let's see. Global liquidity index, this one here. So generally they're pretty similar, but I just kind of reckon this one gives a overall better signal. Like this one here is still trending up. This one here is dropping hard throughout this drop. I know which one I'm using. Like there's fuck all correlation with that one. There's a little bit, but through these choppy times and through this end of cycle, I just don't think it does a good job. I guess it got the high a little bit better here, but I'm going to leave it on this one and we'll see. See which one wins out. In general, though, that's still in a downtrend too. Needs to break out of that trend. All right. Still think that's not looking particularly great. Still haven't broken below that trend line, so let's see what happens. Percentage of stocks above the 50-day moving average is going up. That's a good sign. Oops, Apple. Mag 7. Looks like accumulation here. That's not too worried about that. Momentum's to the upside. Good level. Lots of potential demand in there. Tesla, yeah, just chopping around. Probably come down a little bit, I suspect, and just fill that gap first before we go up. Nvidia, yeah, not looking super strong. Back below the 200. Still above the shorter term moving averages though, so again, could just be some accumulation happening here. Tricky read at the moment. I think most of these are just going to chop around in here until FOMC interest rate decision. Apple, still like to see Apple come down a little bit further. Triple M's looking strong still. Amazon, yeah, not looking great. I think Amazon could still come back a little bit. Same with Meta. Horizontally, like that's a fair demand level, but just think it makes sense for it to come into this trend line a little bit more. Airbnb, good recovery of that support level. Interesting to see what it does on that trend line there. AMD, yeah, good recovery of that bottom trend line, but again, little rejection off the top one. It's a kind of wait and see level still, just with this sort of market. There's nothing really shining here. I mean, the car manufacturers are sort of grinding to the upside. A lot of overhead resistance here, but yeah. Aussie market, decent bounce so far. Recovered that vector, but it's left quite a bit behind as well. So again, not expecting it to go straight back up into there. It'll be a take the stairs sort of situation. Probably somewhere out into May. Well, they say sell in May and go away. Could play out this year. So I'll just go. I'll have a quick look at Bitcoin again before we. Oh, so Bitcoin on the daily too. It's sort of, if we're closing around here, it has confirmed above that mid band. So that is a good thing. But yeah, I just want to see it break that wedge, I think. Quick look at like, well, yeah, this could be a bear flag still, but it looks like accumulation coming off low momentum. Sorry, yeah, low stochastic momentum, but it is trending up. PBWP looks like it's about to turn around as well. That's a good sign. Just looking at ETH versus BTC on the daily. It's not a bad little accumulation area either. These guys have very much tapered off. I'd expect them to start dropping pretty soon after ETH goes up versus BTC. See how that plays out. All right, let's go into here. So a little bit concerning that aggregated spot CVD has kind of not really made a new high through here. So there is a bit of selling, I would say, around these levels on spot. These guys are trying to drive it a little bit higher at the moment. That was a good level for a bounce, but um, we're not putting in lower lows still on this yet. I would say it's generally going in line. Futures is still all over the shop though. Futures is really flat. I'd like to see a big uptick on futures, but I think that's going to happen once we're breaking sort of these levels. I think you'll see futures start to run a bit harder. You know, we're not seeing massive drops when we're seeing red on the bid ask delta either. So, you know, in general, I think there is support here for Bitcoin. It's just must be a lot of sellers as well. CoinAnk, that was a decent low signal in there, especially compared to this one. That's not bad. It even shows up compared to this one. So yeah, not a bad signal through there. Not much else with CoinAnk. I didn't freaking set my levels. So this is probably a bit of a target here. This is only on the 24-hour. We'll zoom out in a second, but 82,800 would be a reasonable target for a pullback. Just a sweep of that level, but I don't know, there's a fair bit above in here, up into that 85.5. And that's just on the 24-hour. On the 48-hour, there is a big one here at 85.2. And decent one there at 86, which is that supposedly that big liquidation level on Hyperliquid. I wonder if Hyperliquid actually goes on. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but there's a pretty decent one at 86. Let's get symbol. Let's go 3-day. So there's a fair chunk up here into the 85.2 level. Again, that 83.3 sort of level, potentially a little bit lower. Not bad levels, but that's it's just whether we can break that wedge. And it looks like just based on this, you would expect the wedge to break to the upside. The only thing is you got this wick here, and if we actually pull back down from there again, then it's not really. That would potentially be a fake out of that wedge. But good liquidity up into the 86K level as well. On the 1 week, yeah, again, that 85.6. So 85.5 is sort of a pretty key level for me. That would be sort of a break of the wedge to the top side. We'd probably pull back a little bit from there, I'd say, just to retest the levels. But yeah, there's a bit of liquidity in the charts beyond that. Quick look a bit further. Yeah, so start to get up, reasonable amount of liquidity, potentially up into the 88s. So it looks like there's a bit of a gap there through the 90s, up into 91. I don't know. I think we could be struggling to get up through there this year. We'll see. See what sort of liquidity comes into the charts as we're climbing as well, because it looks like shorters are are definitely still in the market here, and I think a short squeeze is in order. Um, just there's not as much longs in the system, like not even close to the amount of shorts. 256 million at the 85 600 level, according to this. So to me, short squeeze is the order of the day, and that's why I'm leaning in that direction. Yeah, mining costs still above where we're at. Oh, interesting. We've actually smart money's still flat through the top here, so they haven't actually started selling yet. They're expecting a little bit more upside yet. Some money's starting to come with them as well, so that's a good sign for a more extended bounce. Should have logged into these before I started. Nothing today. That's it has been sweeping the lows last few days. A little bit of a take profit there, probably. I mean, you wouldn't really expect them if they've loaded up in here to actually do much today with the way it traded. Probably trying to watch this live through FOMC in a couple of days to see if there's any big dark pool sweeps that come through. Just a quick look at coin. Don't think there's going to be anything major on these, so might just skip this today. I'll have a look at it in my time. All right, that's about it for today. So generally looking good for a bit of continuation. Oh, Pendle's had a bit of a spike. Just having a look at gaming and that. Yeah, a lot of these are looking good for a bottom, hey. I mean, this could change in an instant, but not bad. I do agree with the bloke that was talking about the circular economy, though, that just crypto bros are selling into crypto bros and they're just buying it because they think other people are going to want to buy it. Yeah, generally looking for this to break to the upside at some stage. That target below at sort of the 83-ish level. Where's it now? Mate, that was a good bounce off the Bollinger Band there. This will be the second candle to close above 13 EMA too. So, yeah, look, it's going to try whether we find some resistance up around here before the FOMC, or whether we break above before the FOMC, come back and retest around then. It's going to be a pretty volatile couple of days, I'd say. Well, let me rephrase that. It's probably going to be choppy. I wouldn't say super volatile. I'm not expecting any massive drops or anything, but it's going to be bouncy until FOMC, and then you're probably going to get a decision made in terms of which way we're going. It's good that we're above all the key moving averages here at the moment, though. Linear regression channel's expanding a bit too, so I'd like to see this turn around though. At the moment, that's a little bit negative. We're still below the slow moving average here, which is generally you should be bear side biased, but being above the 13 EMA on this and having an upside on the shorter term moving average here, I actually tend to stay upside biased regardless of what this is saying. The other one is a longer, yeah. So this one's still kind of upside. This one's just a longer period, 80-40, rather than the 20 versus 9 or 10. Got a different source on that too. So this is like just picking up basically what the hourly would be. That's why I've got that in there as a reference. All right, that'll do for today. I'll catch you later.